Take two.
Mike here with that'sgoodenough4me.com. We're doing our Who's Zoomin' Who series. I'm pleased to be here with John Gentile of punknews.org and Brad Logan from Leftover, Crack, Adolescents, all sorts of different bands and avenues. We're here to promote Architects of Self-Destruction, the oral history of Leftover Crack. It is a book coming out August 10th. How are you guys doing today?
Great, Mike. Thank you.
Cool.
Is it John Gentile or is it John Gentile?
It's Gentile.
He's not very gentle. Trust me.
See, this
but
time
am I genteel? That's the question. That is the question.
So I have been a fan of punk news since 2001, I want to say. And now I get to write with the group, which is really exciting. I thought it was just your handle. It was John Gentile.
Oh, you didn't? Oh no, that's my real name. When they were in Italy, it was Gianluigi, and then when they came to America, they couldn't spell it, and it became Gentile.
Okay. Well, and Brad Logan, it's very excited to meet you as well. I'm a big fan of Leftover Crack. So let's open it right up with the book. I've always been allured by the lore of Leftover Crack, Choking Victim, this giant family of artists and composers, as I'll put it. So let's talk about the story itself, the book. Let's talk about how it got started, and then I want to hear some of the lore of this giant group of artists and people.
Sounds good.
So let's get started with you, Brad. How did this idea for the book get started? And I'm just, as a fan of the band and the legacy, I kind of want to hear some details that we might be hearing about in the book.
Well, the idea for this came about like most ideas that I have that materialize into anything at all. You know, it's just typically sitting in a van, on some, just long, boring drive. And it's like, God, what would be funny? What someone ought to do? And ... And that's, really how this started. There was no plan. It's like, so much, as you probably know, I mean, the history of this band is a lot of ups and downs, a lot of weird things have happened. And we've stayed together, which is the most interesting part. A lot of things that I think would have, broken up a lot of bands perhaps, or that I know of bands have broken up over, we've kind of just stayed together, I think, primarily because none of us had anywhere else to go, artistically, musically, in life, so it's like, man, someone ought to, just put a book together compiling some of this, some of these things that have happened, because I mean, rumors and folklore, I guess, if you will, and hate mail has been following us forever. And it's like, well, here's a chance to talk about a few of the things and kind of put some of those things to rest, as well as, bring up some other things that, there's a lot of history to this band. It isn't just, like any band, it's not this just one dimensional thing. And I always, I'm going to go on a tangent right now, so feel free to cut me off.
No, go for it.
I always love reading about bands, and then you're like, oh man, I didn't know those guys knew these guys too, or they worked with these people, or they were in bands prior with these seemingly unrelated, sort of people or bands, and you find out about these histories, and it's just, to me, it's just fascinating, So I was like, someone ought to write a book, and then nobody did, and then I'm like, well, fuck it, I'm going to write the thing. And I knew it was too big of a project to take on by myself, because, I've never written a book before. And I knew, what I wanted to talk about. and so, I hit up John. I'm like, John's, writes things, and, he's a journalist and he knows how to do this shit. Maybe he'd be interested in helping me, and, he actually was. And so, he was actually pretty excited about the idea, which was great because, especially looking at it now, on the other side of it, it's like, I don't know how one person could ever do anything like this. It was like recording a record with a 50-piece band,
Mm-hmm.
and it, you've made records and stuff, right, Mike?
Yeah.
Making records with, 4 other people, and, the recording and then the artwork and then, all of the things that go into making a record. It's like we interviewed, probably 100 people, John, maybe, give or take.
We interviewed we did over 200 interviews with about 100 people.
Yeah. So,
it sounds like, given the the legacy of the band, that sounds like a pretty good number. And Gentile, I'm such a fucking asshole for not knowing your last name.
Don't sweat it. Don't sweat it.
Let's take it over to you then. Just about
Donnie G.
Talking to you about it, and how did you guys go about this from the beginning stages? Did you just have a lot of conversations that were recorded, or?
Well, the way we did the book is we had about 10 chapters, and we said, in this chapter, this is going to happen. In this chapter, this is going to happen. And then we kind of made a very rough skeleton. And then we started interviewing kind of the main people. Then we went back and we filled in the cracks with the side players or the people that just happened to be there. And then we went back to the main people and filled it in. And of course, in all of that, there's a bunch of chaos. There's this guy saying this thing and this guy saying that thing. And one of the most fun things, and we ended up with about 42 chapters instead of 10. But one of the most fun things for me is somebody will say, I don't know if I want to give any of the surprise or secrets away, but somebody will be like, someone will say, Brad started this fight, and then someone else, then R Babajian will say, Ezra started the fight, and then like facts don't always agree, and it just goes to show how people's memories are not, I guess, that dependable, because we have many parts where multiple people have completely different recollections. And none of them are trying to like make up a lie. That's genuinely how they remember it, and it just doesn't match at all. And I think that's one of the cool things from the book is we have a lot of that. The book is not one unified statement. It's a bunch of different people's perspectives. Sometimes they agree and sometimes they don't. And that would, like Brad was saying, one person couldn't do that. That was the biggest load of the book, is just getting all these different people to snap together.
Yeah.
Killer.
And I think that I love the oral history format, especially for writing about, things like this, bands or music scenes or if anything really. I've read, a lot of different ones and I watch a lot of detective and crime shows and stuff like that, it's always, eyewitness is the least reliable form of evidence, in any criminal case. And that would be the case with this too. It's like everybody's memory about any given subject is going to be, slightly off, if not totally different. And so, when it's presented like that, it leaves it up to the reader to, kind of decide how they want to take it, and it's not some like, we're pushing this idea down your throat. We're such great guys or we're such not great guys or what. It's like, here it all is, and decide for yourself, Well,
and that's what was so enticing for me when I discovered Leftover, Crack, and Choking Victim, I think like in the same year. So I'm thinking like 2002, 2003. Mm-hmm. And so living in Nebraska, and all you have is kind of hearsay about this crazy like gang of people that belong to all of these bands. And I interviewed Squirt. It was my like second episode I ever did of the show. And our big joke was he mentioned that he was being accused of just trying to sell more patches, start more bands and make more patches for those bands, which I thought was funny because I immediately approached him. I said, okay, I listen to Days and Days today because they're going to be in this interview with us. For me, there's just been so many different band members and people coming into this collective of Leftover Crack or any of the side projects. and I have such a difficult time telling them apart. A lot of people have nicknames. So to me, this is this daunting thing that and now I'm excited because I get to digest it and actually understand all of it for the first time. That's what when I heard about the book, I was like, finally, I can put this all to rest and understand this group of people as a whole.
You know, and it's only a slice, Mike. I mean, there's no way we could have, for us to cover, you know, to even attempt to cover the full scope of, you know, all of those avenues you're talking about, and mm-hmm. all of the people related, and you know, follow those trails. You know, it would have been like an encyclopedia volume, you know, and you know, so we had to sort of pick and choose what you know, what stood out as you know, worthwhile things to throw in there. You know what I mean? And cutting it down was really hard. You know, a really hard process. You know, to edit it down to. We only had a certain you know, amount of pages and a framework to work in. So,
yeah, understood. Oh, and that's
it keeps you guessing.
Yeah, and that's what breaks down. You know, Leftover Crack to me is a production. It's not. It's more than just a band, and it's because of how many hands have been in the kitchen working on it at one time. You can listen to the record, which is a full composition with tons of instruments and production value, and then you can find like shitty 7-inch demos of all of those individual songs, and those are just punk rock songs suddenly. And then the live show is an entirely different entity in itself as well. So, yeah, killer project.
You know, I mean, it's you know, it's one guy. It was started by one guy, you know, and but he brought in, you know, he would bring in people from other bands that also had their, you know, would bring to the table, you know, their way of doing things, their way of playing, you know, adding maybe songwriting, you know, pieces here and there, and to me, that's always more exciting than just having, you know, one person call all the shots, you know, even though like 9 Inch Nails is pretty good, you know, that, you know, to me, the best bands were, you know, a collaboration of, you know, what were the Beatles, right? You know, all those guys were their own forces, you know, so not that we're anything like the fucking Beatles, but you know what I mean? That sort of,
I'll say it. Leftover Crack is the modern Beatles, and let me tell you why. Brad makes I mean, Brad is the man, but Brad will always downplay himself, I guess, because he didn't want to come off as cocky. So I'm happy to come off cocky in proxy of Brad. I mean, if you look at the band Leftover Crack is an insane band. Sturgeon, you know, is the guy that founded it, and he's definitely the George Clinton of the band. He has these grand scope ideas that the various members come and bolt together. But if you look at the band, you've got Sturgeon, who is a artistic mastermind, and I don't know if people realize how clever and artistically powerful Sturgeon is, and he is. But then also on top, you have Brad Logan, who is an F-, one of the baddest ass hardcore bands ever. He brings kind of the low power to the band. Then you have Ezra, who is like this operatic like genius that can like literally make an opera in an afternoon. Then you've got Alec, who is just a masterful, like he's a naturally masterful bass player. That is somebody like, you know, from the Talking Heads or something, just naturally gifted at just playing simple but perfect bass lines. And then on drums, you've got Aura of the Slackers. He was in Leftover Crack before he was in the Slackers. Just perfect, like powerful but tasteful, almost minimalistic but perfectly done drums. They're all powerful songwriters in their own. And of course, there's a lot of members too. You know, there's Alice Hour, who was in the band. There's Donnie. There's been so many people in the band, and that's what kind of keeps rejuvenating it. Is as members leave, they keep bringing in people that are their own artistic powerhouses. Like if not to drag it out, but if you look at like Danzig, the band, amazing band. Arguably, as the core people left and brought in some new people, arguably the stuff isn't as good as the classic 4 albums. Whereas Leftover Crack, despite the discord and dysfunction, they keep bringing in artistic powerhouses or workhorses that really keep the band evolving and working off each other. So I guess one of the things with Leftover Crack is it really is a chemistry between the current people in the band, and as those people phase out, new people come in, it creates new eras and interesting new things about the band and new conflicts, which is one of the most interesting things about them.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm saying Brad. I'm saying Brad is the George Harrison, the cosmic, understated power of the band. Sturgeon's is John Lennon.
I'll take that. Yeah.
Or is the Ringo? No.
You did say George Clinton at first, and I don't feel as bad about saying your last name incorrectly.
How do you say George Clinton?
You said George Clinton the first time.
Yeah. I said Clinton instead of Clinton.
Oh, I don't know. I thought you meant George Harrison. It was George Clinton.
I meant George Clinton of Parliament Funkadelic.
Oh, okay.
George Clinton is the ringleader of this giant circus that is Parliament Funkadelic. With all kinds of mastermind, musicians and people in and out of that scenario too. And he's the ringleader of the fucking circus.
I just got thrown by the Beatles comment and then the George Clinton. I got super confused, and then I tried to use it at your expense to get over saying your name incorrectly, and it didn't work.
But no,
yeah, but even just to mirror that, I listened to Mediocre Generica, Deadline, and Fuck World Trade, just the opening track today, because it's kind of the same song, but they're all done in different flavor profiles based on who was in the band at the time. Some of them are looser than others. Some of them are tighter than others. And that was my favorite thing about collecting a new release from the band, was they're going to bring back some old shit. They're going to re-release some songs that were on a 7-inch that maybe didn't sound superb. And they're going to do it in that magic LOC production value that I expect from a full length. So yeah. Killer.
Excellent. Those skits and the sort of things like that, it's all Sturgeon. That's all Sturgeon's.
For sure.
Yeah. Production.
That's what's really funny is we're talking gutter punk, dirty shit. My wife's like, who are you interviewing? I was like, oh, I think this band would kind of scare you if you listen to him. Right. But his choice for production value, he could be going out and doing fucking top 40 pop songs if he really wanted to, just with the mindset that he has and the ears and the creativity that he has, which I'm happy he doesn't, obviously, but
I agree with you though. I think that's what's underneath all of it is just, top 40 pop songs, man, wrapped in shit.
Then as someone so I consider a Pro Tools session with my buddies to be my sandy beach resort. That's where I have some of the most fun in my life, is just all right, how else can we fuck this song up? What else can we add to it? And so just instrumentation alone and production on Leftover Crack record is something that I nerdily fiddle through when I listen to it for the first time. What else are they going to add? How are they going to update this demo with a trumpet or a mandolin or, a skit?
Sure.
So I'm a big fan. I wanted to touch very briefly on, Brad, your experiences with denied visas, being stuck on the border of different places. I wanted to talk about it just because this is something that, everybody in the world has had to deal with for the last year for the first time.
What's your question?
Let's just hear about some of these border stories.
Well, throw any question at me.
Okay. I guess I had heard stories about you guys showing up and just being denied into Canada, at the border with your instruments in your hands.
Oh yeah, that's happened multiple times. And, speaking for myself, I mean, at one time I don't know, I had a drug problem. And so, I accumulated quite a bit of, for about a 10-year period, I was, multiple brushes with the law, and I wasn't a very good criminal because I was continuously getting caught. But that was a long time ago. And the thing is with the Canadian border, they don't forget, and it doesn't matter if it was, X amount of years ago. It's like it happened yesterday, and so if there were one of us pulling up and that was the case, it would be one thing, but we would pull up and there'd be, 3 out of 5 of us would have things like that. So they would just be like, no, get the fuck out of here, and we would try multiple ways, we would have all our paperwork in order and of course you're always like, the promoters are going, no, it's going to be fine. We have all your visa stuff. Everything's in order. He's going to sail right through. And that has never been the case, so, I only made it in probably 1 out of 10 times that we attempted it. Mm-hmm. And, but usually, all of us, if not some of us, are sent packing. And, a couple of times it was like, cool, I'll meet you guys back in New York, carry on. And, and then I think this last time we tried, neither Sturgeon nor I got in. So, we had, a couple guys that were doing merch for us, took over the vocals and, it was one of those things, hey, sorry, those morons couldn't make it in, we're going to play the songs anyways, if you guys are okay with it, and the crowds are fine with it. So, I
had a long conversation with Steve from Belvedere. I got to do a Zoom with him. And so we were talking about the cost and the just paperwork necessary to issue an apology to the Prime Minister of Canada for getting a DUI in 1998 and just how tedious it can be. So I just wanted to hear a story from somebody that actually got fucking denied.
All the time. DUI is like having a multiple homicide on you. They're just like, they would bring you in, they bring me into a small room every time. And, they would ask you about, so what is this? And blah, 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 blah. And it would be like, and so what's this DUI? And it's like, fuck, I'm from California. Everybody has a DUI. What are you talking about? It's like jaywalking here. And, it's a pain in the ass and a real bummer too. Cause Canada's great. And, that's the only country I've ever had any trouble, getting through the, with any border, issues. But since that last trip there, it's like, all right, I'm going to have to go to court and get these, things taken care of because, I don't live my life like that anymore. And, this crap's from it's from another life really. So, I'm jumping through the legal hoops to get that, stuff squared away so it doesn't happen again, but it's a bummer. You're standing there and they tell you, hey, sorry, you're not getting in. And you're going to have to take a cab. You can't walk back to the American side. You have to take a cab and there's these car services that'll pick, that their whole gig is taking people back to, to the American side because people are getting turned away all the time.
Yeah.
And so they just gouge your ass. It's like $60 for a 4-minute car ride, to the American side. And then you get there and the American border is just harsher than the Canadian side, So you get it both ways, right? It's like, fuck, you just want to play music. There's nothing weird going on here,
Yeah.
But anyways,
Brad, when they're like, so how about this and how about that? Is the jig already up and they're just putting the ant under the what do you call it? The glass, or is there a way to finagle your way around that when they're saying, how about this or how about that? Under the spyglass, the eyeglass. That's what I'm thinking of.
Well, yeah, the thing is there's no set protocol. You're very much at the mercy of the whim of the customs officer of the day, and sometimes I've been, I made it to Canada a few times with other bands when I was roading for other bands. And it just depends, on on who you have that day, really, because I would tell them the same story. Yes, this is all, shit's 20 years old. I was a different guy then. And sometimes they go, okay, we'll let you through. You got to pay $200 right now for the visa. And, don't get in trouble there. Have a good time. Some guys are really cool.
Yeah.
But usually not, so Canada's and they're not nice about it,
Yeah.
at all. So, it's pretty humbling process.
Yeah, I get that. Now, John, I was gonna give you a moment to just kind of talk punk news. The site's been around for 20 years now.
22 years.
Okay. Just celebrated. What was the number of that podcast that I did that bumper for?
500. That's right. Mike did. What did you do? Full House, or what did you do? Or Family Matters? You did Family Matters, I think.
I did Full House. I did Married with Children. I might have done a third one. I did these fucking awful, I just sang karaoke on the theme song, but changed the lyrics to be about dead Kennedys and stuff. It was so cheesy, but it was I have to thank you for handing me something creative to do. That was probably the only musical project I did over that 90 days because I was stuck at home, right? But yeah, what other milestones or achievements do you want to discuss with Punk News while, I have you on the show?
Well, Mike was referring to Punk News Podcast 500, which Brad was on. And we opened it up with 5 parodies of, for no reason whatsoever, just because I thought it was funny, as we opened up with 5 parodies of classic sitcoms. We had Susie Moon doing Happy Days. We had Mike doing Family Matters. We had Chris of Crazy in the Brains doing maybe Full House, something like that. And we had Felicia of Quam doing maybe Friends or something like that. And anyways, so yeah, that was Punk News Podcast 500. We're almost ready to hit 550, and we don't know what we're going to do for that. But other than that, I mean, for me right now, the big drive is Architects of Self-Destruction, the oral history of Leftover Crack, which you can buy at Rare Bird Books, Rare Bird Lit. And that's what Brad and I have really been focusing a lot on. Right now we're in PR mode, and we're just telling people about the book and kind of explaining the chaos behind the book, because it was not an easy book put together, but I think it was worth the wild ride. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Brad, while I have you, you've toured with so many bands. So I just wanted, if I could, just one of the silliest, funniest things that you've ever witnessed on the road.
Well, here's the thing, Mike, is, I don't know if I have a silliest, funniest thing, because it all becomes commonplace after a while, right?
True.
The insanity is just, it's oh yeah, this guy's trying to cross the Canadian border anyways. He's going to walk across, and now they're pulling out guns and they're sending out the police are coming down the bridge, and that's just like another day at the office, really, so, which has happened. And so, we put a lot of, some things, a lot of stuff is in the book, right? That was just like, oh, this is insane. This, and a lot of that stuff, blew my mind, that things that are in the Architects of Self-Destruction. With other bands that I've toured with, I mean, I don't, they were all pretty professional, stable people.
Comparatively.
Yeah. So, I remember one time, crossing this was a pretty well-known band, and we were crossing the channel from France to England, right? And so you take a ferry, and if you're on a bus, which we were on one of the, like a double-decker bus with bunks in it and stuff, and so it was really early in the morning that we got into England. You leave France at like 5 a.m, and we got to England at like 8 or whatever. And so we get there and we pull up to customs there, and the tour manager gets out and he's taking all the paperwork in all of our passports and this and that to customs. And so, what you're supposed to do is walk back into the bus and open the curtains on the little bunk things and make sure everybody's, asleep. If they're not up and walking around, make sure everybody's on the bus, do a head count. We didn't do that. He just saw that so-and-so's curtains were closed and he assumed they were asleep on the bunk. So we drive from Dover to London for a show, which is like, I don't know, it's like a 5-hour drive on the bus. We get to the club in London, central London, pull up for, load in and sound check. And then we realize that, and I won't name names, but you know who he is. They realize that, drummer X is not on the bus. They were in fact left back at the customs in fucking Dover. And this was pre cell phone era, right? This was, mid 90s, which was, believe it or not, pre cell phone for the most part. It was like you still had the Miami Vice brick cell phone, and so, the tour manager realized this and fucking freaks out. He has no way of finding out what's going on and of even getting a hold of the guy. And so about, an hour or two later, guy pulls up to the club in a cab and hands the tour manager like, a $400 cab, receipt, like, here, take care of this. He took a cab, 5-hour cab ride, from the port at Dover all the way into central London. I know it may not be that funny, but it was pretty funny and fucked up at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's wild. So I've been trying to ask that question as much as I can. I think Jeff, the site guy, is gonna do some animations of some of those stories. But so Joey Cape was found sleeping in a trash compactor in a stadium by his guitar tech. He hopped out of the trash can, and within seconds, all of the trash compactors automatically went off. So he missed death. I don't know, 2 minutes or something.
It could have been pocket size.
Yeah, he was just trying to find someplace cold and quiet to sleep when he was all fucked up. And his guitar tech or whatever, whoever found him was like, "Oh, if we're trying to find Joey, we need to find someplace cold and quiet and dark." Yeah. So, but killer. Yeah, let's do one last big plug for the book then. I know that you guys were very high up on the list, I think on the Amazon pre-sales. Was that
number true? One, baby? Number one. We're number one.
Yeah, let's give it one last plug before I let you guys go.
Okay. You all should buy Architects of Self-Destruction, The Oral History of Leftover Crack. If you are a fan of Leftover Crack or Choking Victim or extremely chaotic and dysfunctional bands, this is the book for you. We interviewed a bunch of people, and basically before writing the book, I mean, I was definitely a big fan of Leftover Crack and Choking Victim, but I didn't really know how all the puzzle pieces fit together. This kind of fits the puzzle pieces together. But also, I think the biggest selling point I can have, and then I'll shut up, but the biggest selling point I can give is Leftover Crack as a band with a lot of fans, and a lot of people don't like them. The book is not rah, Leftover Crack is the best band ever. Let's look at the positives of Leftover Crack. Let's look at the negatives. Let's look at how these very artistic, clever people interact in a very dysfunctional way and give a true representative view of this band that is in a constant state of explosion and collapse and rebuild and makes some of the most interesting punk I've ever heard. And that's the book, and I think it's rad. I'm proud of it. And of course, I think it's rad because I co-wrote it, but we really worked hard on it, and I definitely think it's something that fans will absolutely love.
And you don't necessarily have to be a fan of the band either. It was designed so it would appeal to anybody that's just interested in music or how bands function or the underground or the overground. It encompasses a lot of things. So I think it's a pretty good read. Personally.
Do you have a specific avenue that you would like for people to pre-order it from?
Go to rarebirdlit.com is a good one. Yeah, direct from the publisher. Isn't it rarebirdlit.com, John?
It's rarebirdlit.com. Some people, so that is the first place to go to check it out. You can get the zine there and the t-shirt. We've got an exclusive t-shirt that won't be made after the book comes out. So if you want the t-shirt, you got to pre-order it. There's also a very cool zine that is companion to the book that we're making, which is almost like I don't want to say the book part 2, but the book extra, if you will, bonus tracks. It's bonus tracks to the book,
Yeah.
But some people that live overseas because of Brexit or whatever, it's been pretty expensive. So you can go to Amazon, but if you also live in the UK, Canada, Austria, Australia, and I think Italy, you can get it locally from the independent distributors there as well. Just Google Architects of Self-Destruction, Leftover Crack, and then it'll come up and you can buy it from a bunch of options. But Rare Bird Lit's the first place to go. But Amazon, if you can't get it from Rare Bird Lit.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you guys for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for having us, Mike.